Okay, so we're diving into this ruffle bucket hat today. And we have this fantastic YouTube tutorial from the Crochetter.
They are so good.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people are probably going to be intimidated by that magic circle. It's like the first thing we have to tackle in this project.
It's funny because they have this interesting technique. I've seen other crocheters do it, but not a lot, where they hold it with their fingers
Oh.
to make the magic circle. So you can kind of adjust it as you go.
Oh, that's smart. That's really smart.
Yeah.
I always have trouble with the size of that starting circle,
Yeah.
like whether it's too tight or too loose.
Yeah.
So I can see how that would be really helpful.
Totally.
Okay, so one thing that I noticed right off the bat is they call for cotton yarn.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why cotton is better for this project?
You know, it's funny because I use acrylic for pretty much everything, but I think for a hat, cotton is more breathable.
Okay.
So it's going to be more comfortable on your head, and it's going to hold its shape better.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can see acrylic getting kind of floppy.
Yeah, and sweaty.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got our magic circle. We're using our fingers to adjust the size. Then we dive right into the crown.
Yes.
And they're talking about using a 1-2-1 pattern to increase.
Yes.
I will admit, I always get tripped up on the increases.
Yes. It's so funny that they actually had an aha moment in this video. They were talking about how when they were a beginner crochet, they thought increase meant chain up,
Oh.
but it actually means like working 2 stitches into one.
To one?
Yeah. And that's what gives you that like rounded dome shape.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So 1, 2, 1 basically means you're increasing in every stitch for the first round, then every other stitch,
Okay.
then every third stitch.
Okay.
So it gives it that nice gradual dome shape.
Okay. Gotcha. And that's how we get the shape of the crown.
Yes.
Now, how do we know when we've reached, like, the right size?
That's a good question. They actually recommend trying it on your head
Oh.
as you're going,
Yeah.
which seems obvious,
Yeah.
but it's something that I think a lot of people forget to do,
I would never think to do that. I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, I can just measure it. But putting it on your head,
right?
that makes so much more sense.
Yeah, especially for a hat. You want to make sure it's going to fit snugly, but comfortably.
Exactly.
You don't want it to be too tight or too loose.
Okay, so we're doing frequent check-ins
Yes.
with our head
Yes.
as we're going. And I'm assuming stitch markers are really helpful in this stage.
Stitch markers are essential in this stage.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you want to make sure that you're placing your increases in the right spot.
Right.
Because if you miss an increase or you put it in the wrong place, it's going to throw off the whole shape of your hat.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're using stick markers. We're checking in with our head.
Yes.
We've got the crown going with the 1-2-1 increase. Then what happens?
Then we move on to the side of the hat. And for the side of the hat, we switch to a smaller hook, a 4mm hook.
Okay.
And we're just going to be working in single crochet without increasing
Okay.
for about 14 rows.
Okay, so that's where we get the height.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
sure.
That's where the hat starts to get taller.
And I noticed in that section, they really stress the importance of counting your stitches.
Yes.
What happens if we mess up the count?
Well, since we're not increasing anymore, the stitch count is really important for maintaining a consistent width.
Okay.
So even if you miss one stitch or you add an extra stitch,
Right.
it's going to create a little wonky spot in your hat.
Okay, so that's where it really counts.
Yes,
I
exactly.
got to count careful.
You got to count carefully.
All right, so then we get to the fun part, the ruffle brim,
Yes.
and we start increasing again.
Yes, we start increasing again, but this time we're using single crochet
Okay.
to create the ruffle.
How many rows do we do for that?
That's up to you.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, you can make the brim as long or as short as you like. You can keep increasing for a few rounds, or you can go all out and create like a really dramatic floppy brim.
I love that. Okay, so we can customize the brim.
Yes, you can totally customize it.
Fun. So we've got the structure down, the basic structure.
Yes.
But I'm curious what they said about fastening off and weaving in the loose ends. Like, how important is that step?
It's really important because it makes your hat look more polished.
Oh.
And it prevents your work from unraveling,
Right.
which would be tragic after all that counting and increasing.
Yes, so it's like the finishing touch.
Yes.
That makes it look professional.
Exactly. It's like the difference between homemade and handmade.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like the little details that make a big difference.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah. So we talked about the basic structure and the materials, but now let's get into some of the fun stuff. Like those stitch pattern variations that the crochet mentioned. Could you swap out single crochet on the sides of the hat for something else?
Yeah, I was wondering about that too, because single crochet can be kind of basic.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's nice to have a little bit more visual interest. So what other stitches could we use that would work well for the sides of a bucket hat?
For a more subtle woven look, the moss stitch would be really cool. It's a simple stitch, but it has a nice texture.
Oh, I love moss stitch. It's so versatile. You can use it for so many things.
Yeah, exactly. And then for something a little bit fancier, you could even do the shell stitch,
Well, that's a good idea.
which makes these like little fan shapes.
Ooh, that would look so pretty.
It'd add a touch of elegance.
Would switching up the stitch pattern change the fit of the hat, though?
It's a really good question. And that's why they recommend making a gauge swatch,
Okay.
because different stitches have different heights and textures. So
Hmm.
switching from single crochet to something else might make the sides looser or tighter.
Oh, I see.
And
Yeah.
then you'd have to adjust your hook size or your stitch count.
Gotcha. So we're doing a test drive before we commit.
Yes, exactly. A test drive for your stitches.
I like that. Okay. So what about that ruffle brim? Can we get even more creative with the wave effect?
We can totally get more creative with the wave effect.
Okay.
So instead of single crochet increases, you could try clusters or baubles or even picots. Oh, those would make more of a pronounced ruffle.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah,
Because the single crochet is kind of subtle.
it's very subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you want something more dramatic,
Right.
I could definitely play around with those other stitches.
I wonder if you could do like color changes within the brim too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That'd be really cool.
You could use a variegated yarn or even like planned stripes.
Ooh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, lots of possibilities for the brim.
It's like the star of the show.
Right. It's the ruffle.
Yeah, it's the ruffle. Okay, so we've talked about stitch variations. We've talked about the brim. What about embellishments?
Embellishments are a great way to personalize your hat.
Okay.
So they mentioned adding a decorative butterfly,
Yes.
which I thought was really cute.
I love that.
But you could also do other things like crocheted flowers or beads or buttons.
Ooh. What about like a crocheted band around the crown?
Ooh, yeah.
Like a contrasting color or a textured stitch?
That would be really cute. I like that.
So it's like we're turning this hat into a blank canvas
Yes.
for our crochet creativity.
Yes.
Exactly.
Your own little wearable art.
Exactly. Okay. So speaking of like the process of crocheting, the crocheter talked about how therapeutic it can be for them.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that. There's something about the repetitive motion of the stitches that's very calming.
Yeah. It's almost like a form of mindfulness.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And they also emphasize that it's okay to make mistakes
Yes.
and embrace imperfections.
Yes. Which I think is so important because a lot of times as crocheters, we can be really hard on ourselves.
Totally.
If our stitches aren't perfect or if our project doesn't turn out exactly how we envisioned it.
Right.
But it's important to remember that it's a process.
Right.
And it's supposed to be enjoyable.
Right. It's not about perfection. It's about the journey.
Exactly. And the beauty of crochet is that you can always frog your work
Yeah.
if you're not happy with it.
That's the best part. You can just rip it out and start over.
You get a do-over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So speaking of mistakes, what are some common challenges that beginners might face when trying to crochet this ruffle bucket hat?
One of the biggest challenges is tension
Okay.
because it can be really tricky to maintain a consistent tension throughout the project,
Right.
which can affect the overall size and shape of the hat.
Yeah. My tension's all over the place. Sometimes I'm like pulling really tight,
Wow.
and then sometimes I'm really loose, and then I'm like, why is this so wonky?
Exactly. Yeah. And it can be frustrating. So one of the things that they recommend is practicing with scrap yarn
Okay.
before you start your project.
Sure.
Just to get a feel for the yarn and the hook
That's a good tip.
and the stitch that you're using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also important to pay attention to your posture
Oh, okay.
and how you're holding the yarn.
Yeah.
Because if you're hunched over
Right,
and
yeah.
you're gripping the yarn really tightly,
Yeah.
it's going to affect your tension.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got to have good posture,
Good posture.
relaxed grip,
Relax grip.
and practice with scrap yarn first.
Yes.
Okay. Breaks. Oh, yeah. That's important.
Yeah. Because crocheting can be surprisingly tiring on your hands and wrists.
I know I get hand cramps sometimes.
Yeah. So it's important to take frequent breaks
Okay.
to stretch and rest your eyes.
That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? What other challenges?
Another challenge that beginners often face is counting stitches,
Oh, yeah.
especially when you're working in rounds.
It's so easy to lose track.
It is.
Hmm.
It's so easy to lose track. So that's where stitch markers are your best friend.
Yes.
They can really help you keep track of your stitches,
Yeah.
especially when you're working on a complex pattern like this one.
Right. Because you're increasing and decreasing and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Easy to get lost.
Yeah. And you can also use them to mark specific points in the pattern,
Okay.
like the beginning of a round
Right.
or the location of an increase.
Oh, that's a good idea. Like little reminders.
Exactly. Little reminders built into your project.
I like it. Okay, so stitch markers, tension breaks. What else?
Another potential challenge is understanding crochet terminology. Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of abbreviations and terms that can be confusing for beginners.
I remember feeling so overwhelmed by all the abbreviations. When I first started crocheting, I was like, what does this even mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like learning a whole new language.
It is.
But fortunately, there are a lot of resources available to help you decipher the crochet lingo.
Okay.
The Crochet actually includes a glossary of terms in their video description,
Oh, that's helpful.
which is really helpful.
Because sometimes you're like, wait, what is a double crochet again?
Exactly. You need a little reminder
Yeah.
sometimes.
Okay, so we've got resources to help us with that.
Yes.
We do. That's good. So we've talked about challenges. What about like the business side of crochet?
Ooh, the business side of crochet.
The Crochet mentioned selling patterns in ebooks.
Yes.
Have you ever thought about selling your crochet creations?
You know, I have thought about it, especially after seeing how successful the Crocheter has been.
Yeah.
It's definitely inspiring.
Yeah. It seems like there's a real market for handmade items these days.
There's a huge market for it, and people are willing to pay for quality handmade goods.
Yeah. Especially things that are unique and personalized.
Exactly. And that's what's so great about crochet, is that every piece is one of a kind.
Right, because even if you're using the same pattern, your tension's going to be different. Your yarn's going to be different.
Exactly. It's going to have your own little personal touch.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about selling your crochet creations,
Mm-hmm.
I say go for it.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not?
You could turn your passion into a business.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive. We've talked about stitch variations, embellishments, the challenges of crocheting, and even the business side of things.
Yes.
Now, in the final part of our deep dive,
Yes.
we're going to explore some advanced techniques
Ooh,
and variations on the ruffle bucket hat pattern.
I'm excited.
Me too.
Ah,
Let's take it to the next level.
let's do it.
Okay, so we've covered the basics. We've talked about some variations, but now I want to get into those advanced techniques. The crocheter mentioned. What kind of things are we talking about?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is color work.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of just using one color yarn, you can use multiple colors to create stripes or patterns or even images.
Oh, wow.
Like imagine a ruffle bucket hat with a rainbow brim
Oh, that would be so cute.
or a floral motif.
I've always wanted to try color work, but it seems so intimidating.
It can be a little bit more challenging, but there are different techniques you can use, like tapestry crochet or intarsia crochet.
Okay.
And the Crocheter actually has a whole playlist on their YouTube channel dedicated to color work.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's a great resource.
Okay, so we've got color work, and they also mentioned using different yarn weights.
Yes.
What do they mean by that?
So yarn weight refers to the thickness of the yarn.
Okay.
So a heavier yarn weight, like a bulky yarn, will create a thicker fabric with bigger stitches. And then a lighter yarn weight, like a fingering weight yarn,
Great.
will create a finer fabric with smaller stitches.
So if we wanted like a really chunky, cozy-looking bucket hat, we could use a bulky yarn.
Exactly. It would work up a lot faster, too.
Oh, that's a bonus.
Yeah, because the stitches are bigger.
I like that. Okay, so we can play around with yarn weights.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. What about embellishments? We talked about some basic embellishments, but I feel like we could get even more creative.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What other ideas do you have?
Well, we talked about crocheted appliques.
Yeah, like leaves and flowers.
Yeah, you could even do little animals.
Oh, that's cute.
Like a woodland creature hat
I love that.
with mushrooms and acorns.
That's so cute. And you could even add like beads and sequins to the applique.
Definitely.
Make it to the next level.
Bling it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, what about adding some dimension to the hat itself?
Oh.
Like, could we incorporate 3D elements?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
You could add crocheted cables or baubles
Cool.
to create some texture and visual interest.
I love baubles.
Yeah, they're really fun. And then you could even try incorporating some Tunisian crochet.
Oh, yeah. I've seen Tunisian crochet.
Yeah.
It's so pretty.
It makes a really beautiful woven fabric that's thicker and more structured than traditional crochet.
That sounds really cool. I'd love to try that.
Yeah, it's a fun technique.
Wow. This is amazing. I feel like we've gone from basic stitches
I know.
to like colorwork yarn weights, 3D
We've
embellishments.
covered a lot of ground.
Tunisian crochet, it's like a whole world of possibilities.
It is.
And it's all starting with this one simple hat pattern.
I know. It's amazing how you can take one basic idea
Right.
and just run with
Make
it.
it your own.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so much fun.
This has been great.
I feel so inspired to go and make this hat now and try all these new techniques.
Me too. I'm ready to get crochet.
Yeah, and I hope our listeners feel the same way. So if you're out there and you're listening and you're feeling inspired, grab your hooks and your yarn and let's get crochet.
Yes, let's do it.
Don't forget to share your finished hats with us. We'd love to see what you create.
And be sure to check out the Crocheters YouTube channel for more inspiration and tutorials.
Yes, they are a fantastic resource. And that's it for our deep dive into the ruffle bucket hat.
Happy crocheting, everyone.
Happy crochet.